Good evening, everyone. Welcome back inside our home field Credit Union Studio B for another all-new edition of the Milford Informer. I am your host, Tim Coet. Tonight we have a couple of stories surrounding local government to recap for you. And then later on in sports, we are packed with exciting highlights, including one team achieving a goal 20 years in the making. Let's get to all of the details as we present our top stories rundown. Tonight, we'll share some of our coverage of this week's Board of Selectmen meeting, which featured conversation from residents and the board itself regarding the contract status of Milford Police Chief Thomas O'Laughlin. Also tonight, we'll highlight the candidates for state representative and state senator as they participated in last week's Citizens for Milford Candidate Forum. And later in sports, we have highlights from football and boys soccer, with both teams showing off some last-minute heroics. The contract status of Milford Police Chief Thomas O'Laughlin has been one of the most discussed topics around town for the last several months. This past Monday, that discussion continued inside Town Hall as residents filled Room 3 to have their voices heard during the meeting's invitation to speak. We had the full meeting covered for you here on Milford TV. Here are just a few examples of what residents had to say, as well as discussion from the Board of Selectmen itself.
I've heard numerous stories about how Chief O'Laughlin has affected people's lives in this town personally and professionally. An exemplary record as a police officer, a chief, and more importantly, a leader who has made a strong commitment to the community by what I perceive as the be, no, do philosophy of leadership. If you aren't familiar with this type of leadership, I suggest everybody look it up because it's the epitome of what a true leader is. With all this in mind, hundreds of Milford residents, if not thousands and beyond, are now questioning this decision by our board to not renew the chief's contract. We residents who are familiar with the general laws of the Commonwealth and the town bylaws that regulate this board are fully aware of your entitlement to executive session. However, when a decision such as this is made behind closed doors without legitimate reasoning or regard to every man, woman, and child that it affects, we have an issue. Now, I'm aware that when dealing with contract negotiations and bargaining agreements, it's a complex process. I understand that. I think everybody understands that. But I'm just asking that if that's the case and an agreement can't be made, then somebody just owns that position publicly.
What are we doing in this town? Shameful. Shameful. I had more respect. Now what? The chief, I can go to bed and sleep, knowing my town's safe. My grandkids safe. I can walk in the middle of the night. You want to throw the best thing out of town? Huh? Wrong. Wrong.
Chief O'Laughlin has done so much for this opioid crisis that personally affects my friends' families. This is a big problem, obviously, right now in the young generation, and the fact that he, instead of putting people in jail, drives them to rehab facilities. That should speak enough for his abilities in this town. So.
Chief has done so much for our schools. As a parent that has 3 kids, 2 that have graduated, 1 that's in 8th grade and heading to the high school next year. The implementation of the I-Team, to have that expertise in our town gives parents such a peace of mind knowing that our kids are safe, and should they not be safe, there is someone here in our town, a team ready to be there in minutes to help them. That's huge as parents. And not only that, just having worked on all of the councils and seeing how the chief has supported our schools is really big. And it's an example for other towns to emulate and to follow us. And I think to lose that piece of our community and to lose that leadership is going to affect our schools. And as 3 former school committee members, I implore you to think about that as well. Thank you.
Well, as chairman, I want to thank all of you for coming. I appreciate the support. And I will say this. I'm going to entertain a motion right now with my fellow board members that we rescind the vote that was taken not to renew the police chief's contract, and that we go back into contract negotiations with the chief. We have time. There's no hurry. And so I'm entertaining a motion that we go back, rescind the vote that was taken originally, not to renew the chief's contract, go back into negotiations with the chief.
With that motion on the table, I appreciate the theatrics, Mike, but you know as well as anybody else, we have a meeting in executive session to discuss with council the collective bargaining process with the police chief.
No, Mr. Chairman, I just want, and quite a few of the comments tonight is the transparency fact of it. So I think that we need to go into executive session, still stay on schedule. We were reached out to finally, so I think that dialogue needs to take place prior to coming back in.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in open session now. We are tabling the discussion on the establishment of the Police Chief Selection Committee until November 5th, while the board awaits a response from the chief to its last correspondence to the chief in March of this year to determine if further negotiations will be conducted between him and the Milford Board of Selectmen.
We stick with local politics for our next story. Last week, the citizens from Milford invited the candidates for state representative as well as state senator to participate in an open forum. The following is a small sample of question and answers held with each candidate involved in the races.
And I'd like to know what your position is on Proposition 3, or the ballot question 3. Do you have a question? Do you have a position on that?
Question 3, for folks that might be unaware, is on the ballot, and it looks to try to reverse or take back the public accommodations law for transgender rights that was passed in the last session. And forgive me if I get confused, but I'm supportive of the question because I do not want to override the law that was passed, okay? If that is the correct vernacular on it. That law extended anti-discrimination to folks of transgender, which had passed in 2011 in Massachusetts, which extended to the fields of education and housing, and the law that's seeking to be overturned is public accommodations. So it's just an extension of what was passed in Massachusetts in 2011. I wasn't in the legislature when that law passed, but I do support it. I think that to do otherwise is just unfair discrimination against people.
I've actually gone back and forth on this because I have heard of some incidents that have happened, but I do have to say that I agree with Brian as far as being able to keep that law into effect for all of the same reasons. For all the same reasons there is a certain amount of discrimination. You know, I've really struggled with this a little bit because there have been people I've known who have had situations happen to them while they've been in there. But my feeling is my heart goes out to transgender children and adults that can be discriminated against and looked at in a different way.
Earlier in the night and throughout your campaign, you cited healthcare and education as two of your biggest issues, which I think are very laudable issues to take on. But my question was, how do you plan on funding your answers to some of these issues?
Absolutely. I think there are several ways we can pay for it, but one thing that the Supreme Court has allowed Massachusetts to do, finally, is to collect online sales taxes, something that we haven't been able to do because of outside organizations that are selling things online. This could see a significant amount of revenue for the state, and it also will help our brick and mortar businesses who are at a disadvantage right now because online retailers aren't charging or giving sales tax to the state. So the Supreme Court ruled that Massachusetts can collect that. That's going to see a significant bump in revenue. This is not a new tax. This is a tax which already existed. And I think it should go to our schools and healthcare personally.
So we had a $1 billion budget deficit when I came into office. We worked together, reform-minded, closed that gap. Now we have a $1 billion budget surplus. The problem with our state tends to be they like to spend your money a lot. And Tom will be part of that. He thinks that it's good to go to a single-payer healthcare system, which estimates out there are $35 billion. No state sales tax collected on the internet is going to cover $35 billion. That also doesn't include moving people from the private sector who are employees to the public sector, who now you have their salaries, you have their pensions, you have health care liabilities that have long-term forecasts for costs.
There was an amendment passed on an omnibus health care bill in the last session that would have actually studied the cost of moving towards a single-payer system, what the cost savings would be for the average consumer, and that was the responsible way to determine what the cost of moving towards such a system would be. You voted against that study. You're one of 3 senators to do so. So instead of actually looking at what we could do to save costs, you just knee-jerk vote against it.
No, I just don't think we should get anywhere near a single-payer system. You look around the world, Canada, other parts of Europe, they come here for their health care when it's an emergency.
All right, hold off. Come on. Please. No, audience, please.
I'm just curious how many people have relatives that live abroad. So my aunt and uncle live in Denmark.
All right, okay, hold on. Please.
There are wait lines in other countries for simple procedures like a rotator
There's
cuff.
wait lines in Milford Hospital.
Excuse me, please. Thank you.
I don't think single payer is a good system for Massachusetts. We're consistently ranked #1 in the United States for care. I think that is incredibly important to maintain. And my point is, you can't just raise taxes to pay for all these things. There are hardworking, good people trying to raise families, and they can't afford it. I don't think we should go back to Taxachusetts. Apparently, Tom Taxes does.
The Milford football team has been fighting an uphill battle for the last several weeks trying to work their way back into the playoff picture. Last week was the final week before playoff seedings would be determined. Could Milford pull out one more W to try and propel themselves into a playoff spot? Let's check out the highlights. It has become tradition for Milford and Stoughton to meet up on the football field in the final week before the playoff seedings are determined. The Black Knights have managed to get the better of Milford each season since the current playoff format has been in effect. Could the Hawks finally break that trend and extend their winning streak in the process? The Hawks' defense would end up setting the tone early in this game. Facing a 4th down and 4 on the opening drive, Stoughton would make the dangerous decision to keep their offense on the field, and Chappelle Feaster would make the Knights immediately regret the decision, picking off the pass from QB John Burke. Milford's offense would come out onto the field, starting their drive from the Stoughton 33. Colby Perez would then look to convert the turnover into points on the very first play of the drive, targeting Hugo Lopes in the end zone, but the pass would be well defended with junior Anthony Pisano nearly getting his hands on it for the pick. The drive would come down to a 4th and short play, where Perez would look to have an easy hookup with Brendan White for the first, but White would inexplicably drop the pass and Milford would turn the ball over on downs. On their next drive, Milford would face a 4th and 7 from just inside the Stoughton 35. Again, they would elect to go for it, and this time Perez would complete the pass on the near side to Chappelle Feaster, but Milford would be called for a holding penalty, and the Hawks would be unable to score on the possession. On their first possession of the second quarter, Luke Rosa would get the offense going as he takes the check down pass and motors his way to a 26-yard gain. 2 plays later, it appeared Milford would finally cash in on a scoring opportunity as Sean Lehane would turn a short completion into a 21-yard dart to the end zone, but Milford would be called for another hold as well as an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, wiping the TD off the board. After missing out on what would have been his 5th TD reception, Lehane would then look to come through with his first successful field goal attempt of the year, but Stoughton would block the 42-yard attempt and the ball would deflect all the way back to the Milford 30-yard line. After failing to muster much on offense throughout the first half, Stoughton would take advantage of the short field as John Burke would connect with Alex Iverson on a 25-yard touchdown to give the Knights the first points. With time running out in the half, Perez would get the next Milford drive started with a pass delivered on the money to Hugo Lopes to give Milford a quick gain of 20. 2 plays later, watch as Sean Lehane is able to make the catch away from his body before accelerating forward. Stoughton would manage to bring the senior down a yard shy of the goal line, setting up 1st and goal for the Hawks. On the next play, Perez would find Feaster on a 1-yard touchdown completion, leaving Milford an extra point away from tying the score. But just as they did on the field goal block, Stoughton would get quick penetration into the backfield, and Lehane's extra point attempt would be blocked, and that would allow Stoughton to hold on to a 1-point lead heading into halftime. Midway through the third, Stoughton would drive deep into Milford territory. They would face a 4th down where once again they would elect to go for it, and once again Milford would make them pay, with Brendan White coming through with the Hawks' 2nd interception of the day. After Milford was forced to punt, White would look to lead the way on another impact play on defense, forcing a fumble that would give Milford a golden opportunity to take the lead. The possession would wrap around into the 4th quarter, where White would continue to serve as the playmaker, producing a 17-yard touchdown catch that would indeed give the Scarlet Hawks the lead. This time around, Milford would elect to go for 2 rather than kick the extra point, but the try would be unsuccessful, keeping the score at 12-7 Milford with still 10 minutes to go in the game. With Stoughton now trailing for the first time, they'd look to connect on a few big plays to get them in position to retake the lead. Here, Burke targets senior Ali Awad deep down the field. The pass would fall incomplete, but the Hawks would be whistled for yet another penalty. It would be a pass interference call on Chappelle Feaster, allowing Stoughton to advance the ball all the way to the Milford 35. Moments later, Stoughton's lead running back Jeff Greer would wind his way into the end zone for what appeared to be the go-ahead score, but this time it was Stoughton who would see a potential TD wiped out due to a holding call. The Knights would keep the drive going, however, and eventually Christopher Ace would run it in from 12 yards out. Stoughton would then convert a successful 2-point try to establish a 3-point lead on Milford. The Hawks offense would then get the ball back, and they would orchestrate a methodical march downfield.
Down by just 3 with still plenty of time left on the clock. Here we go on 1st down. They will give it to Luke Rosa. A nice play up the middle for Luke, who will bring it all the way to midfield. About 14 yards on the ground on that play for Rosa. They'll take this snap with just under 4 minutes left to play. 2nd down and 9. And Perez will look to throw. He'll air it out down the far sideline. Has Feaster wide open for the catch. 3.5 minutes to go, so now Milford thinking about clock management, but meanwhile, Luke Rosa slices right up the middle. He will be brought down at the 6-yard line. Another big play on the ground for Rosa. He has come up huge for the 2nd straight week. Milford just inches away from retaking the lead. Pearl checks the defense, now ready to go, and able to lower the head, and looks to be in this time. And there is the signal, a touchdown for the Scarlet Hawks. Ryan Pearl runs it in from 1 yard out, and this will put Milford back on top. It is now 18-15.
The kicking game would continue to be a struggle for the Hawks as Lehane's extra point bid would hit off the upright, leaving the score at 18-15 Milford. After the Hawks defense was able to come up with big play after big play throughout the game, it was only fitting that they had one more up their sleeve as Stoughton took the field with 1 minute and 40 seconds to go. John Burke would unload a deep ball targeting Jean Roux down the far sideline, but watch as Chappelle Feaster times his jump perfectly and locks up with Roux for the catch before wrestling the ball away from the receiver, completing the 4th turnover of the night, this one icing the win for the Scarlet Hawks. Milford is finally able to best one of their biggest league rivals as they win this game by a final score of 18-15. The good news, Milford was finally able to earn a victory against Stoughton. The bad news, once again, Stoughton ended up standing in the way of Milford making it into the playoffs. By the slimmest of margins, Stoughton was able to edge out Milford in the playoff power ratings. As a result, the Black Knights were able to grab the final playoff spot in the D3 South bracket. So unfortunately, the Hawks just miss out on a playoff spot, and they will now enter into a non-playoff schedule for the next 3 weeks. That schedule starts tonight with a matchup with Dartmouth High School. Milford TV will have coverage of the game, and we will continue to have football highlights for you on The Informer next week. So while there will be no football playoffs in Milford, the boys' soccer team is continuing to gear up for their upcoming postseason run. The team had a chance to enjoy 2 games at home this week, and Milford TV was happy to be on hand for both. So let's go back to the highlights. The playoff-bound Milford Scarlet Hawks in first place right now in the Davenport division by virtue of an 8-1-5 record overall on the season. They welcome in today to their home field the Stoughton Black Knights, 0-14-1 on the season. The Black Knights reside in the bottom of the Davenport division standings. And now Stoughton trying to get the clear. Milford staying poised, now shooting this ball ahead, trying to find Wallison de Oliveira, looking for an early opportunity, and sprawling out for the save was Jerome. De Oliveira held scoreless last week. He had taken over the overall points lead in the Hockomock League, as now Stoughton's going to shoot one on net, and that one drifts just wide to the right. Not many teams are going to be willing to give de Oliveira much space. This one coming in from long range, and good hands for Nolan Jerome. He makes another save, already 2 good saves through these first 5 minutes of play. A lot of what Joao does out there on the field is not going to make its way onto the stat sheet, but has been playing some of the best soccer in the league, as de Oliveira is there for the second chance effort and puts it in the back of the net for the first score of this game. Finally, one leaked past Jerome. Now it's Borges over the middle. And Borges will drop it deep. Here's de Oliveira trying to fight for it. They get past the keeper. Can de Oliveira put it in again? Yes, too easy for Wallison de Oliveira. Got behind the keeper. Another topic of conversation, which we'll get to in a moment. João Vitor Nieva, a laser right into the back of the net. Nolan Jerome did not even see that one coming. Stoughton has not seen very much time in their attacking side since early on in this half. Carvalho trying to clear it out. Here's Jordan Borges. And now again, ahead to Wallison de Oliveira, hesitates, gets past the keeper again, and there is the hat trick once again for Wallison de Oliveira. Goal number 3 of this half. And de Oliveira stealing that one away. Now again using the quick acceleration, an early chance here in the second half, and rolls it through. And there is goal number 4 in the game for Wallison de Oliveira to give Milford a 5-0 lead. They toss it into Joey Madden. He centers it, and Jerome flies through traffic to head it away, but then quickly shot back in from the edge of the box. Make it a 6-0 score. I believe that was Lucas Da Silva, number 16, with the goal. Their best mark on the season. It was a 6-0 victory over Attleboro. That was the playoff clincher. Now here's another one coming in from long range, and count it. João Pedro Da Silva, we're told, the goal scorer there. And everything falling for Milford now. Again in deep, here's Anthony Salvador. He gets around the defender, in towards the net, and he scores. Anthony Salvador now with his 2nd goal of the season. This ball played forward. Here's Salvador. Gets himself plenty of room. Can he get another one? Instead centers it up and in for Omar Lima. This is going to be one that Milford fans will enjoy watching over and over again, with just the relentless scoring. On Thursday, Milford would square off with the Canton Bulldogs in a game that would essentially decide who would take the Davenport Division crown. After both teams spent the early portion of the first half feeling each other out, Canton would be presented with the first prime scoring chance. With the ball up for grabs inside the box, Canton's Griffin Roach would get one past Josh Orellana in net, but just prior to the shot, play had been halted due to an infraction on the Milford side, and the potential goal would be waved off. From there, we'd see some good opportunities present themselves on both sides as the half went on.
And ready to go. This ball on a line and off the hands of Orellana. He's able to deflect it harmlessly out of play. And now Milford able to deflect this one away, but not out. And now whiffing on the shot attempt. This allows Milford to get the ball upfield to de Oliveira. The defense closes in now. De Oliveira getting support, but he's able to weave his way around the defense, now into the box. And he pops that one up over the net. Now stays in play. Milford ended up getting another opportunity there. That ball looked like it was headed out, but it stayed in for De Oliveira to try to redirect. Paolo Ruggieri lined up for it. I beg your pardon, it's Griffin Roach. And another save made by Orellana. The rebound chance, he makes the save as well. Now the header opportunity, Milford can't quite get the clear. Now back out to the edge of the box. Canton still has it. Two phenomenal saves for Josh Orellana. The defense back there as well. 3 opportunities to score for the Bulldogs, and Milford denies it.
The two sides would play to a scoreless tie over the first 40 minutes, but the drama would quickly ramp up as the second half began. A little less than 3 minutes in, Paul Corcoran would take a free kick from a little over 20 yards out. The ball would end up taking a tricky bounce on the way in that froze Orellana, and the ball would tick off the post and in. Corcoran would get credit for the goal as the Bulldogs would take a 1-0 lead. It would not take long, however, for Milford to have a chance to respond.
Lively a crowd as we have seen for a soccer game here in Milford all season long. Now the deep toss in by Joey Madden, and Milford immediately gets the answer. And it was Lucas De Silva. And less than 60 seconds later, De Silva is able to even this match at a goal apiece.
A little more than 10 minutes later, after a lot of tough physical play on both sides, we'd see Wallace and De Oliveira enter the action, this time as a facilitator.
Now Milford pushing ahead. Nieva again ends up on the turf. Here's De Oliveira now, trying to make it through traffic. Now here's Nieva. He slides in and scores. And pumped up afterwards, João Vitor Nieva, who has been frustrated in this second half. He's taken a lot of contact, has not had a lot of whistles go his way, so he makes his own luck and gets congratulations from his teammates. This Milford team absolutely electrified as João Vitor Nieva gives the Scarlet Hawks a 2-1 lead.
Not even 2 minutes later, we'd see another scoring chance develop off a toss-in. This time off the Canton toss, the ball would end up deflecting perfectly to Simon Cruz, who had a clear path to the net, and he'd send it past Orellana as the momentum would swing yet again in this match. This match had all the intensity and drama of a playoff game right down to the end. And with just over 3 minutes to play, Milford would prove they saved their best for last.
Borges over the middle, has some room, will fire it on net, and it is in! And Jordan Borges, with 3.5 minutes to go from about 20 yards out, gives Milford the lead back at 3-2. And there is the whistle. And you can see the emotion on the sidelines as everyone from the Scarlet Hawks bench races out onto the field as Milford will take this match by a final score of 3-2, and the Milford Scarlet Hawks are your Davenport Division champions for this 2018 fall season.
The win sealed up Milford's first ever Davenport Division championship and the first league title for the program since 1999. Congratulations to the Hawks. We look forward to covering the team once the MIAA tournament begins. And that is going to wrap up this edition of The Informer. We thank you as always for tuning in. And from all of us here at Milford TV, this is Tim Coette saying have a great week. So long, everybody.